In Lesson 2, you learned that carbohydrates are components of food that are made of carbon, oxygen, and hydrogen. In this lesson, we're going to talk about how your body handles various kinds of carbohydrates. Carbohydrates come in three basic types: sugars, starch, and fiber. Starch is a kind of long-chain carbohydrate that our bodies can digest. Fiber is another kind of long-chain carbohydrate that our digestive organs cannot break down. Sugars, starch, and fiber are all present in much of the food that we find in natural settings, like these. You'll notice that these foods all come from plants. Plants are very good at making carbohydrates, which they can construct out of water and the carbon dioxide in air, and pack with energy from sunlight. The two simple sugars most commonly found in foods are glucose and fructose. They have exactly the same amounts of carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen, but they're put together a little differently. Think about how you can use the same toy construction pieces to make different shaped cars or animals, and you'll get the idea. Glucose is the simplest carbohydrate for the body to digest. And of all carbohydrates, it has the most immediate impact on blood glucose levels. Fructose is different. Your cells can't use it for energy like they can with glucose, so the body has to change it into a form that it can use. That happens in the liver, which is a kind of factory that makes substances the body needs. The next most simple carbohydrates found in foods are combinations of two simple sugars. There's a scientific name, but we'll just call them double sugars. For most of us, the most common double sugar we eat is called sucrose, and it's made of 1 part glucose and 1 part fructose. Digestible chains made of more than 2 sugars are called starches. Starches can have tens, hundreds, or thousands of glucose units. When they're digested, starches break down into glucose. If you were listening closely, you heard me say digestible chains are starches. The non-digestible chains are called fiber. Just because we don't digest fiber doesn't mean it's not important. Fiber makes it a lot easier for your intestines to move things along, and it also makes your intestines more hospitable to great colonies of friendly bacteria, which are referred to as your microbiome. By the way, it's not exactly true to say that fiber is non-digestible. Our bodies don't have the ability to break fiber down, but some of the thousands of kinds of bacteria that live in the digestive system do. Okay, so there are simple sugars, double sugars, starch, and fiber. Pretty simple, really. Where it gets tricky is when you start talking about carbohydrates in food. Let's look again at foods found in nature. Some of these foods contain higher amounts of simple and double sugars. Some have more long-chain starches. But they all have something in common. The carbohydrates are bound up in plant material, generally inside cells. Now let's go back into the grocery store. Here we find carbohydrates, all right? But now, a lot of them are in processed foods, in which the plant cells have been ripped or smashed apart, in which long carbohydrate chains have been chopped into short carbohydrate chains, in which fiber has been removed, or to which pure, simple sugars have been added, often in huge amounts. These are foods that your body was never designed to handle. They're not good for you, but they're great for the companies that manufacture them. Cheap, assembly line friendly, slow to spoil, and able to be made as sweet or salty as necessary to make them hard to say no to. What happens when those concentrated sugars and easy-to-digest shorter starch chains arrive in your digestive system? Blood glucose tends to shoot up rapidly, and so does insulin. Here's an example. This graph shows how insulin response to flour changes, depending on how finely the flour is ground. The very top curve, with the highest level of insulin response, is the finest grind of flour. Dumping a load of sugar and highly refined starch into your digestive system is like setting off a 5-alarm fire that calls for a lot of insulin in a short period of time. If it keeps happening, the result of fire after fire is that the body either can't produce insulin rapidly enough, or it doesn't respond well to the insulin that is produced, or both. Either way, your body's processing of carbohydrates is no longer normal, the first step towards diabetes. What's most important to understand about all this is that it's not so much the amount of carbohydrates in the food that affects your body's glucose and insulin response, but what has happened to it before it got there. What's the answer? Well, you could eat only foods found in nature, but for most of us, that's just not very practical. What you need is a map and compass to help you find your way to healthier foods inside the grocery store and your kitchen. Fortunately, those exist, and you're going to be introduced to some of them in Lesson 4.